Hey guys, my name is Ryan and welcome to Overwatch Central and welcome to another Master Guide, a series where we talk to particular players about certain heroes that they have a lot of experience in so we can get some good tips and tricks on how to play them. Today we're going over Zarya and we have CANAS1AN, who is a content creator that makes a lot of videos on Zarya, does VOD reviews, and if you want to know more about the hero you should definitely check out his YouTube channel, which is in the description below. As per usual, let us know what heroes you would like us to cover in future Master Guides regardless of whether we've done them before. And also let us know who you would like us to talk to about said heroes. Whilst you're there, you might as well like this video. Let's get straight into it. So, first and foremost, why should people be looking to play Zarya for Season 6? Or any future seasons as well?
So, especially in Season 6, Zarya has seen some buffs, especially with her Graviton, as well as Roadhog is getting some buffs, so that makes Zarya even better. But most of all, from every season, Zarya's a bit of a jack of all trades. She's an off tank, commonly called, but she's also an off DPS and an off support. She can do amazing DPS with enough energy, and her barriers are definitely a way to support her team directly, not necessarily with healing, but to, you know, protect your team from mistakes or assist your team to make a big play. So she's definitely an off everything, which is why I think she's such a strong hero.
Just before we get started, we've had a lot of like pros on recently, people with high SRs like 4.5k. Whilst you're still Grandmaster, why should people listen to you when it comes to giving Zarya advice?
So I'm definitely not as high rated as some of the other people that have made master guides. However, I've been making like Zarya specific content for about 10 months now, and while I'm not the best player with her, I think I have a really strong understanding of her and of how to play her, how she works, what to do in any given situation. Now, there are definitely players better than me. I talked to Catacris recently, who's an amazing Zarya one-trick, and he taught me things, so it's still learning things from people better than me. But for the average player, I think I do a very good job of helping them improve with the hero. Yeah,
you do a lot of like VOD reviews as well for Zarya's all across like the spectrum. What is the most standout mistake that you see, even in the higher tiers?
A mistake that I see across all tiers, very common, is bubbling using your projected barriers when you're already at high energy. So barriers give 40 energy each, and when you're at 80 energy and you have the choice between using personal shield and projected barrier to farm energy, I see a lot of players use their projected barrier to get that 20 more energy when really they should be using their personal shield, because the projected barrier has 5 targets it can go on, all of your 5 teammates, and the personal shield only goes on you. So to have your projected barrier available is a lot better than having your personal shield available. So at high energies, I'd recommend people to use your personal shield to keep your charge up, and then use your projected barrier when your team needs it.
I think we'll sort of start from the beginning of a match, I suppose. That's probably the best place to start when it comes to talking about Zarya's kit. Getting that charge initially and shield management as well at the start of a fight is very different to during an engagement, sort of late into the battle, for example. What are you trying to achieve at the start of a match to get high charge? Like, what is the best way to go about making sure that you start off on the right foot as Zarya?
So definitely when a match starts, both teams enter in what I commonly call a poke phase, referring to Zarya's abilities. So when the two teams are at a distance from each other and they're just like throwing damage at each other, that's the best time where you can use a full rotation of barriers, both personal and projected, to build up 40 to 60 energy, and then after that initial rotation you just want to keep your energy going up with your personal shield, whereas you'll save your projected barrier for someone that needs it. And what most people don't realize is when you get a good projected barrier off, it's still going to give you energy. It's not instantly, right when you want it, when there's a bunch of spam coming your way, but it'll still give you that energy if someone gets hooked or pinned, etc. So right at the start of a match, right when the teams see each other, everyone just throws damage at each other. That's a great time to use both barriers to get some initial charge, but then as the teams push in and get closer, use your personal shield to keep your energy up, protect yourself, and then use that projected barrier to protect your team, and you'll still be getting energy from both barriers.
Also, what kind of fire are you using? Are you using your primary or secondary in a lot of those situations? Because I imagine the enemy is going to be quite clumped up. They might be good to right click in a lot of situations. Like, what's always interested me with Zarya is the ebb and flow of her playstyle. So I always wondered what you're looking for in other people when you're watching Zarya when it comes to this poke phase, making sure that you can get an elimination, stay on hard charge, and most importantly, not die as well.
Yeah, so if you have a standard team comp, let's just say there's a main tank, whether it be like Reinhardt or Orisa, you kind of want to be behind them. So that way you can do your frontline duties by protecting your main tank, as well as 180 and protect someone behind you as needed. So So that positioning you use to get charge, and then maintaining that position, most enemies will be at grenade range and out of beam range because the two teams haven't approached each other. However, once the teams kind of close in, you'll be wanting to use beam to burn down the enemy front line. Beam is amazing versus tanks. It does a lot of damage at decent charge, as well as the huge hitboxes of the tanks makes it really easy to track them. Now, the grenade has so many uses with it specifically. It can displace enemies, knock them around, mess up their aim. You can use the grenade jump and stuff, but the grenade is really good against those small, nimble targets that are hard to track with beam. Now, if you're not a tracking god, like myself, I am not a tracking god. I use beam a lot versus like tracers, Anas, mercies, etc., and use beam mostly versus tanks. But the grenade is also an amazing finisher versus those small targets that have small HP pools. Once you get them down to like, I think a 100 charge grenade does a 95 damage. And once you get someone to like 75, you can just finish them off with a grenade as long as you hit them with it.
I think Zarya is a hero that she has a lot of panic moments, either where she has 0 charge and can't seem to get it for the life of her, but also when she has high charge and is very concerned about, dying and losing all of that charge completely. Let's start with having 0 charge in the middle of a team fight, and what advice can you give for those situations where players may be panicking a little bit, and then how would you also give advice to those that have high charge and aren't really sure what to do with it?
A fight is breaking out, it's no longer a poke phase, and you're at 0 charge. So the first thing that you want to keep in mind is make sure that you're getting quality barriers, and just keep your cool. Like you're saying, people panic, do your best to keep your cool and really use the visual cues in Overwatch to benefit you. A fire strike has a big glow, or soldier rockets have like the trail and stuff like that. Junkrat grenades glow, so when the damage is coming, and you want to use those visual cues to make sure that your barriers get energy. So to build charge with the personal shield, look for those visual cues. Now a fight's breaking out and you want to get energy with your projected barrier, there will be someone guaranteed on your team that's going to need that shield in order to not die, or someone on your team's engaging, and you want to keep an eye out for that person. So if you're maintaining that position right behind your main tank but in front of the rest of your backline, you can kind of keep an eye on your front line, because the main tank is usually the first target because they're big, they're in the way, giant HP pool, giant hitbox, so they're usually the first target, and so they're the easiest person to barrier to get that charge while also protecting them. But if you're versus like a Genji or a Tracer or a Sombra, and they get in on your backline, just kind of listen for those audio cues. Anna's calling for I need help, or let's say Mercy's healing you and you see your HP bar to take a big chunk. That's when you want a 180, put the projected barrier on them and try and scare away that attacker. So you just gotta use the visual and audio cues of the game to make sure you're getting quality barriers.
Okay, that reminds me of the whole sensitivity settings for Zarya's barriers and all of that jazz. Is that worth looking at all? Do you feel that it makes a difference? Is that something that you've changed in your own game?
Yeah, so when the setting did first come out, I tested it at 50%, and what I found was after playing with 100 sensitivity for so long that I started to miss a lot of key barriers because my reticle just wasn't close enough. Now, well, it does happen sometimes, someone will get in the way of a barrier, and it's definitely unfortunate. I found playing at 50 that didn't happen any less, just based on my positioning, that the barriers still went on to the wrong target in that case. If I'm looking at Reinhardt, I'm standing behind him, and a Lucio or Ana flies across my screen and I bury them on accident, the smaller sensitivity didn't fix that. So I ended up bumping it back to 100, because you can pull off some crazy barriers at 100 sensitivity. Like if there's like a sliver of a corner, then you can save someone with just that tiny sliver because of the 100 sensitivity. So I recommend using 100 and just positioning yourself more, and then just relying on your teammates to not get in your way.
What is good positioning for Zarya? Like you've said that she should be in the off-tank position just behind her main tank, but also sort of like in front of the supports, in almost like a midfield position in football or whatever. What else are you trying to do as well? Because I feel that Zarya is a hero that you can get caught out a lot of the time due to bad positioning.
A lot of Zarya is maintaining that midfield position, as you call it, but what ends up happening is they'll use a personal shield and move past the shield to try and get energy, which is fine, but what they don't have is the duck back behind the shield. They move forward and they get the energy, but then they feel super powerful, like I just got all this energy and I'm going to keep going forward, but really that's dangerous because you just use your shield, you don't have that protection anymore, and now if you walk in front of Ryan or Orisa, let's say, now your healers have to overextend to heal you. Like if Anna's trying to heal, Reinhardt's in the way, or maybe there's an enemy in the way. So once you overextend past your main tank, you're kind of, in no man's land. It's between you and the other team, and Zarya doesn't have the HP pool or a big enough shield to really stay out there long. It's really up to her healers at that point to keep her. The other type of bad positioning is when you're just not with the team at all. You're off on your own trying to do like a solo mission. High energy Zarya is definitely a 1v1 monster, especially with that shield. Like versus McCree or Soldier, you can block the flashbang, block the rockets, and use grenades and beam to kill them down. But while you're doing that, you aren't able to shield anyone on your team if they need it, because you're off on the side. There's probably terrain in the way. Maybe there's teammates in the way. You can't shield the person you want. So when you're off doing this solo mission, well, you might get this 1v1. Zarya thrives in a team setting versus in the solo setting.
That kind of brings me on to another question as well, which is obviously dying in Overwatch is a big thing, but for Zarya it's a huge loss. Like, you can't really help dying in Overwatch, much like life, but how do you avoid dying in a lot of situations in Zarya? What are the situations that keep catching her out that you feel you shouldn't be there in the first place, other than what you said with overextending?
Yeah, so besides overextending, the ways that Zarya's died the most is mostly because they forget about their shield cooldown. So let's say, if someone has done the bob and weave correctly, like they dipped out, got the energy, and they fell back behind the Reinhardt shield, so that's correct Zarya play in my opinion. What ends up happening is they kind of attune their personal shield cooldown with the projected shield cooldown, but the personal shield actually has 2 more seconds. It's 8 and 10. So they'll start to take a fight, but they'll forget, like, it's 2 more seconds till I have my shield, and then they'll die that way. But mostly it's overextending is definitely the most common way. The solo missions, the overextending, and not realizing, your own survivability with your cooldowns is the 3 main reasons people die are. Obviously, if your team's getting wiped, you're going to die that way, but the ways that you die yourself are those other 3.
I think there's some pretty interesting audio cues with Zarya as well, especially when you go and lose that 200 shield. You hear a big crash, I suppose, so that's always a good telegraph, I suppose, that you're in a situation that you need to back out of fairly quickly.
Yeah, the other thing is the shield gives 40 energy, and the moment it gives 40, you also know that it's pretty much broken, because it gives 1 energy for every 5 damage. So once it gives you 40, it's taken 200 damage. So you should know, even if you miss the crash or miss the visual cue, that it's gone. Once you get the 40 energy, the shield is gone. Yeah, you definitely kind of get a feel for her flow. She's a lot. I want to say, Genji has kind of a rotation. You kind of spam shurikens, and you dash in, do your thing, reflect, get the kill, and dash out. He kind of has a set pattern. Zarya also has, that set pattern. You want to use your personal shield for energy, keep an eye out for good projected barriers, and then once you hear the crack or you see the 40 energy dissipate, or you get 40 energy, then you want to retreat. The other thing that helps me keep track of my shields is I use the default reticle on Zarya, which most people don't actually. They think it clutters the screen, but seeing the big, mine's green, seeing the big green circle just kind of visually tells me my power level without having to read the number. It's just kind of on my screen at all times, and that helps me also kind of keep track of, did I just get a burst of energy? Okay, my shield's gone. Okay, back up, sort of situation. Can I take this 1v1, etc.? Because it's just constantly telling me my energy without having to read a number.
Mm-hmm. Without getting too personal, this is just a question I've sort of come up with, is that you said before that you're still learning stuff about Zarya, and you are a very insightful person. You do a lot of VOD reviews. I imagine you look at your own stuff as well. In your own opinion, what is the thing about Zarya that you feel you need to improve on?
It sounds silly, but the thing that I need to improve on the most with Zarya is definitely my beam aim. I'm not an amazing DPS player, and my aim is not nearly as good as a lot of other players. Other players are just robots. Their aim is insane. So definitely my aim is the most thing. When people watch my gameplay or watch my stream, they see if they really were very critical, they could see I'm missing a lot of, beam hits just because I'm waving it back and forth. So I've been working on my sensitivity and stuff, but that's the most prevalent thing in my opinion.
Now I want to talk about maps in particular. There's some really good Zarya maps, such as King's Row, just because of how flat it is. I just wondered, what other good maps, what other good game modes should you play Zarya on? But probably more importantly, because a lot of players I imagine would kind of one-trick Zarya to an extent. What maps and what areas of maps would you not play Zarya on?
Yeah, so you kind of hit the nail right on the head there. King's Row is definitely Zarya's best map, but the reason it is her best map is because there's almost no verticality built in. So maps that have verticality, multiple levels, are where Zarya becomes a lot weaker and Winston becomes a lot stronger. So King's Row, like you said, is really good. Volskaya is pretty good because only the second part really has the high ground's kind of minimal in those two cases. There's lots of cover from the high ground there, and Zarya on Volskaya can jump the second point. Dorado's pretty good. There's really only high ground in that second phase with like the church. Hollywood, except point 2 is not good for Zarya. Dorado point 2 is not good for Zarya, but the rest of those maps are pretty good. It's mostly flat. Your team will mostly be together. The enemy team will mostly stay together, which gives for good grab opportunities. Eichenwald, for the most part, the castle is kind of like a wonky part, but the point 3 Eichenwald, when it's just that long run, there's no high ground in that entire phase, so Eichenwald is really strong. Numbani...
And there's a lot of spam damage as well.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of spam damage. Numbani, Streets, and point 2 and point 3 are both really good. Like point 1 for Numbani is just awful because you can't get up and down, but the Streets phase is really, really good, and especially that third phase, it's all flat, right at the end of the map. So, and Lijiang Tower is probably her best Koth map because there's not very much verticality in that one either.
Yeah, so what maps are the ones that you see competitive and you're like, oh god damn, I wish I had another map?
Definitely, yeah.
Like you said, Numbani first point is a really good area that's...
Yeah, Numbani first point is definitely like, I'm going to play Winston here, guys, and I'll switch to Zarya and Streets phase is basically what I always do. Gibraltar is like, it's hit or miss with Zarya, but it's mostly a miss just because every single phase has high ground that the defensive team, especially if you're attacking, the defensive team can use. You've got the shuttle in the first point, you've got the high ground L, shuttle in the second point, high ground L on the first point, you've got that overhang on the third point, and Zarya just, by the time it takes to rotate up those stairs is just too long. You'll be apart from your team way too long, and Gibraltar's probably one of her worst maps in my opinion, and Oasis. Oasis is not good either. Oasis and Nepal both are not great for Zarya. Nepal's not necessarily a verticality reason, it's mostly because of the ranges. Sanctum and the Shrine, those distances are just really far for Zarya, and for her to really get into beam range, it really like, especially if you're attacking, like the enemy team has the point, Zarya can't do anything until you get, right up next to them. But before that, you can't, like on Sanctum, you can't beam anyone until you're approaching them. So the Nepal is just because it's too open.
I imagine as well, like any maps that have insta-death, like well on Ilios, Sanctum, as you said, you could be high on charge and just get booped off the edge, it's all for naught. I imagine they're also pretty terrible maps for Zarya.
Yeah, it's a terrible, terrible feeling when you're full charge, ready to just blast the enemy team, and a good Doomfist or Pharah or Lucio or Orisa or Diva, God, there's so many now, Roadhog will just knock you right in there, and that really sucks.
So you mentioned something before about changing to Winston and then Zarya, and that brings me on to, I want to talk about synergies, but I also want to talk mostly about the relationship between her and the other main tanks. Like, what main tanks do you like to get paired up with? What tanks do you also not like to get paired up with?
Yeah, so my favorite tank to play with is definitely Reinhardt. Aggressive Reinhardt players, that's the dream team, because as Zarya, you enable his aggression, and then an aggressive Reinhardt makes so many plays, killing people, getting so many earth shatters. It gives you so much energy. It really opens up the enemy team for your team to just push in. So aggressive Reinhardts are my favorite. I actually don't mind playing with Orisa that much. I think she's people are still kind of figuring out how to play her, just even though she's been out for a while, but with her recent buffs. So you were saying like she blocks a lot of damage with her shield. It makes it easy. Everyone tries to spam down the shield so you can get easy charge with your personal, and then as Orisa should be like moving the shield forward. Eventually it'll reach a point where the two teams are close enough, people will just try to rotate through Orissa's shield and attack her, which makes her a really easy barrier target for you. With her fortify, with the barriers you put on her and her damage, she'll just crush anyone that tries to 1v1 her. So I actually don't mind playing with Orisa that much. It's a good replacement for Reinhardt. A lot of Zarya players like playing with Winston. I kind of have like a love-hate relationship with that. You really need a good Winston to know his bubble timings and your bubble timings to make that work. At the start of a match with the Winston, I'm like, okay, when you jump in, I'll bubble you first and then you bubble, and Winston will be like, okay. But they always, once the moment they jump in, they're just so used to instantly putting down their bubble, they just do it out of habit. And now both of us end up wasting our bubbles. Mine didn't get any energy, his is protecting him, but it's just like a weird situation. So Winston, like, sometimes, but not my favorite. Kind of the same with Diva with her defense matrix. Like, if you go in, I'll bubble you, don't defense matrix. And then right when they go in, they defense matrix, and it's just like everyone's wasting their cooldowns at that point. But the tank I hate playing with the most is Roadhog, because everyone has like the 2-2-2 mindset, and I'll pick Zarya. I'm like, all right, we need another tank, and someone will pick Roadhog, and I just facepalm because Roadhog and Zarya is just a terrible tank duo. They don't create enough.
I suppose it's really good to get charged.
Yeah, he's good to get charged, but I mean, Zarya is so much more than just her charge, right? The job of the tanks is to create space for your team to, move in, take the objective, or defend the objective. And Roadhog and Zarya have almost no space creation outside of Roadhog's 8-second hook. So like he'll toss a hook, and then for 8 seconds, what is your team supposed to do? They can't do anything. And it's just like you just sit there and stand there while you're waiting for Roadhog to do something, versus like Winston, Diva, literally any other tank can like slowly move your team forward, whereas Roadhog, Zarya cannot do that.
We haven't spoken about the ultimate at all, actually. I think there's big changes and big differences with the new Graviton, now that 3 heroes can only get out of it now, as opposed to like half the cast of Overwatch. What advice would you give about now? I think one of the main things that I say is that DPS players no longer have to try and wombo combo ultimates, because Zarya's on her own, especially if she's high charge, can wipe them with ease anyway.
Yeah, with the Mercy changes coming through, wombo comboing won't be nearly as necessary. You mostly just need like an Ana grenade for a Zen ult, or just overwhelming, like Junkrat Zarya can easily blow through a sound barrier. But wombo combo, there's like a couple main uses of Graviton, wombo combo definitely being the most used. The other ones that you kind of see that aren't used very often are like to deny overtime is not used very often. Crowd control enemy heroes that are ulting. So like during the Beyblade days when it was like Reaper getting nano boosted, sometimes it was worth it to just Graviton him so he couldn't actually death blossom your whole team. Environmental kills, obviously that's kind of extremely situational, and sometimes if you really need it, you can use it to bait out a support ult. If you have like Nanoblade and Graviton, you could either Nanoblade to bait out the support ult and then Graviton, or you could Graviton to bait out the support ult and then Nanoblade. It's kind of up to the team to decide which one will have more value. But wombo comboing is definitely the most useful, and if you are going to do that, just communicate with your teammate, that whoever you want to wombo combo with, let's say Tracer or Pharah, that you're going to do it, and then save your projected barrier for that teammate. So let's talk about the Pharah. Like Pharah combo's one of the the tried and true ones. Once Pharah starts spitting out her ultimate, she needs protection or she'll get hooked, slept, or die, and that's when you as the Zarya player need to come through for her with a projected barrier. If you're going into an engagement, you say, I've got Graviton, you've got Barrage, let's combo, know that that's what's going to happen, and save that projected barrier for your Pharah. So many times I see people talk about wombo comboing, then you see them like toss a barrier on someone that didn't need it, and then they do the combo and like Pharah gets instantly killed, and then it's just like a waste of 2 ultimates. So that's one of the biggest tips I can give about using the ultimate.
What about timings of ultimate? I think that's a really big thing as well. Of course, I think this is a big thing for a lot of heroes in Overwatch when it comes to the timings and economy of ultimate. So for Zarya, when is the best opportunity to ultimate in terms of priority? If you have a typical 2-2-2 lineup, the old school Reinhardt and Zarya, Soldier, Pharah, and then 2 healers, you don't want to overlap Reinhardt and Zarya ultimate, for example, because those are 2 big crowd control ults, and you really want to use each one to win a fight, so don't overlap those. So in terms of timing, if everyone in the game has their ults, you can expect the other team's going to blow some support ultimates to stop you. So you want to open up with the Graviton, because it doesn't actually do damage. It does do damage, not very much, but by getting them to use a support ultimate to stop Grav, that opens the door for a DPS ultimate to come through and just win the fight that way. So if we did, Barrage Graviton and they use Transcendence, sometimes Pharah will still be able to kill people because Barrage does so much damage. But let's say you don't kill anyone, now your Soldier has a chance to ult and there is no Transcendence.
And then if they do that and the sound barrier comes out, you can use Earth. I mean, there's so many different combinations, but it's the best opener. Like Earth Shatter and Graviton are the best openers, but between the two, I'd say Graviton is better because it baits out the enemy ults versus Earth Shatter. If you knock them all down, they won't even get a chance to ult. So depending on what your goal is, I think Graviton's the first one you do, the first combo you want to start with. Like the most common mistakes I see people do, especially like in VOD views and watching people play, is they use their barriers without, seeing any damage coming their way or towards their target's way. They just use the barrier kind of hoping for it versus knowing it's there. That's a big mistake. Using barriers when you're already high energy, it's only going to give you 20 energy when you could have just waited for a better opportunity and gotten 40 energy. Definitely, be patient with those barriers. Using projected barriers when the two teams are really close to each other, Zarya players tend to think they're still in a poke phase, but the two main tanks are only like 10 meters from each other instead of like 80 meters. So the poke phase is ended, but they still use the barriers like it's a poke phase, which just invites the other team to, damage your main tank or even kill them. Yeah, I'd say the last thing that is really common is lots of Zarya players reload mid-fight when they still have, 30-ish ammo left. That's enough to beam and get one more grenade. That's like 29 beam and one grenade, which is still a lot of damage. Just reloading mid-fight is super common. And turn on allied HP bars.
I guess to sort of finish on then, what tip is your like golden tip? What tip has helped you the most, that has helped the people that you've reviewed content for, not even just for Zarya but for other heroes as well?
Yeah, so I'll just answer the two different questions here. So the tip that helped me improve the most with Zarya was when someone told me not to worry about my average energy. I used to be obsessed with having high average energy, but the quality of my barriers was just terrible. I would get a bunch of energy, but then people just kept dying around me. And then after kind of transitioning into what I call the selfless Zarya playstyle, which is you save your barriers more for your team than for yourself, I was able to climb a lot better and still maintain good energy. It's not the best energy, but it's enough to make a difference in a fight. So that was the tip that helped me improve the most. And the best tip I can give about playing Overwatch is you have to really ask yourself, what's the more important to you as the player? Is it winning, or is it improving and being good at Overwatch? Because the two things aren't mutually exclusive, but people tend to focus more on winning a game than actually improving in a match. So I used to be that way too, and just losing was just soul crushing at that point, where it wasn't even fun and just like ruin your evening. But once you just focus on like having a good game, even if you lose, you can still walk away from that match, knowing that you did well and just be happy with your performance. So that's the number one thing that I would say.
Cool. And just to sort of finish on then, you play a lot of Zarya, you do a lot of coachings on YouTube and stuff. Where can people find more from you and just your general sort of social media stuff as well? I
post a lot of YouTube videos on my YouTube channel, CANAS1AN. I also stream semi-regularly on Twitch at CANAS1AN. You can find me on Twitter at CANAS1AN, and you can join my Discord server, which is also named CANAS1AN.
And that's it for this time. Thank you very much for watching. As I said at the start of the video, do let us know what heroes you would like us to cover in future Master Guides. Again, regardless of whether we've done them in the past or not. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, really helps out the channel. And until next time, take care. We'll see you then.